During a fiery live broadcast, Rosie O'Donnell launched a cutting and unexpected attack on Ibrahim Traoré's intelligence. But no one, not the studio audience, not viewers at home, and certainly not Rosie herself, was prepared for what came next: a calm, brilliant, deeply human reply that shifted the entire tone of the conversation. As the tension thickened, the studio lights burned hot. Rosie shuffled her papers, her expression sharp with anticipation. The camera zoomed in. This, she declared to millions watching live, was a man who claims to lead with integrity. But let's see how much he really knows. Across from her sat Ibrahim Traoré, president overseeing Burkina Faso's transition. Dressed in a modest dark suit, he didn't flinch. Rosie leaned in with a smile that sliced like a blade. "Tell me, Mr. President," she said coolly, "do you even understand what real democracy looks like? Or are you just another strongman with a few well-rehearsed buzzwords?" A murmur rippled through the audience. Traoré sat silent, eyes fixed on hers. The stillness became uncomfortable. Even Rosie faltered, not expecting the silence to last. Then he leaned in slightly, his voice quiet but steady. "Sometimes, Rosie, we confuse shouting with strength. But it's the quiet ones who carry the heaviest burdens." The room went utterly still. Rosie blinked. For the first time that evening, something shifted inside her. A tightness in her chest she hadn't anticipated. But she pressed on. "You talk about lifting your country," she challenged, her voice rising. "Yet your GDP is among the lowest in the world. Your people live in poverty. How can you call yourself a leader?" Her words sliced through the air like broken glass. Some in the audience shifted in discomfort. Traoré's response was almost gentle. "You're right, Rosie. We are poor. But our poverty isn't just numbers. It's the legacy of being forgotten, left behind by the same world that now sits in judgment." Rosie opened her mouth to interject, but he continued, voice cracking slightly. "Do you know what it feels like for a mother to feed her children only once a day? To watch your friends die, not from war, but neglect. That's what I wake up to change. Not for me, for them." The room held its breath. Rosie leaned back in her chair, momentarily without a response. Something unfamiliar crept in. Shame maybe, or something deeper. She tried one last time to reclaim the upper hand. "You talk a big game about compassion, but power corrupts. What makes you so different?" Traoré closed his eyes for a beat. When he opened them, they glistened. "I'm not different," he said softly. "I'm just a man trying to do right by my people before the earth swallows me too." His words, barely louder than a whisper, echoed through the studio like thunder. Rosie stared at him. Her expression softened. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held her note cards. And then, almost involuntarily, she whispered into her microphone, "I've never heard this before." Her voice cracked. The audience gasped. It was no longer just an interview. It had become a moment of raw, disarming truth. And still, Rosie pressed one final, brutal question. "If you're as intelligent as people say, why is your country still begging for aid?" The camera zoomed in on her face. Confident, almost smug. Ibrahim didn't blink. He looked directly at her, gaze calm and unwavering. Because Rosie, dignity isn't measured in dollars. The room fell silent. "Would you rather we stayed quiet, hungry, and invisible?" He added, leaning forward just a touch. "Would you prefer I left my people to die in silence, so others could feel more comfortable about what really means?" Rosie froze. The audience sat stunned. With a few unshakable sentences, Traoré had turned her sharpest jab into a mirror. And for the first time that night, Rosie's confidence cracked. As the next segment rolled, Ibrahim sat in stillness, hands folded in his lap, the weight of his words lingering in the silence. Inside Ibrahim's mind, a memory surged, vivid and unstoppable. He was 14 again, barefoot in his village, dust clinging to his feet. His mother stood in the market, bartering their last goat for a bag of rice. He watched her face fall as the offer was rejected, watched her swallow tears in front of strangers. That image had never left him. So when Rosie O'Donnell fired her next question, "Are you even qualified to lead?" he didn't answer right away. He breathed in slowly, met her gaze, and said, "When my people were starving, no one came. When our women carried water for miles, no one asked if they were okay. I didn't go to Harvard, Rosie. I went to life. And life taught me this: you don't need permission to care for your people." Rosie's lips parted, as if ready to fire back. But she didn't. Something in his voice stopped her. A wave of conviction, undeniable and steady. From somewhere in the crowd, a woman whispered, "Whoa." It was the first time Rosie faltered. Her fingers tightened around her cue cards. Her voice, when it came, was softer, though she tried to mask it. "You really think you can fix all that?" Ibrahim's reply came like a breeze before a storm, gentle but charged. "I don't think, Rosie. I know I have to try. Because if I don't, then who will?" The words cut straight through her. There was something in his eyes, something unwavering, that made her own begin to sting. She blinked rapidly, trying to push the tears back, but the cameras didn't miss the tremble in her lip. Neither did the audience. Silence descended again, thick, heavy, almost sacred. Rosie opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked down at her notes. Ibrahim didn't press. He sat back calm and composed, letting his words linger. And in that moment, something shifted, not just in Rosie, but in everyone watching. The live chat exploded. "This man speaks truth. Why am I crying?" I've never seen Rosie speechless. Somewhere deep inside, Rosie felt it too. The segment briefly cut to commercial, but the atmosphere in the studio didn't budge. The silence remained. Rosie sat still, eyes fixed on her cards, fingers trembling. Across from her, Ibrahim sat quietly, hands folded, expression calm, almost kind. Behind the cameras, producers whispered frantically, "This wasn't supposed to go like this. She's losing her edge." Rosie glanced up at him, and for the first time in her career, she felt small. Not diminished, not humiliated, just humbled. When the lights returned and the theme music faded, the host announced, "We're back." Rosie inhaled. Her voice cracked as she began, "Mr. Traoré, you said something earlier I can't stop thinking about. You said you learned from hunger, from watching your people suffer." She hesitated. "Do you really believe that makes someone qualified to lead?" Ibrahim leaned forward slightly. "No, Rosie," he said gently. "I don't believe it makes me qualified. I believe it makes me responsible." And again silence. Rosie struggled to regain composure, but her defenses were fraying. The lights seemed hotter, her voice thinner. "You speak about responsibility like it's a gift," she said, her tone unexpectedly vulnerable. Ibrahim nodded. "It is." She blinked, shaken. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. She had come to confront him, to make him stumble. Instead, she was the one holding back tears. He continued, "When I see a child without food, or a mother balancing water on her head for miles, I don't see statistics. I see my mother, I see myself, and I can't turn away." You see, Rosie, real intelligence isn't how well you speak or which school you went to. Real intelligence is the courage to care, even when it's hard. Her breath caught. She tried to look away, but the weight of his words held her. In the audience, someone sniffled. A camera operator wiped his eyes discreetly, and for the first time that night, Rosie lowered her gaze, unable to meet his. Rosie stared down at her notes, but the words blurred as tears welled in her eyes. She swallowed hard, lifted her gaze, and finally said, barely above a whisper, "I've never heard anyone say it like that before." Ibrahim offered the smallest, warmest smile she'd seen from him all night. "That's because most people are too afraid to speak from the heart," he said gently. The audience, who had been holding their breath, exhaled all at once. It was as if the entire room had shifted, moved into a space where truth didn't need to shout to be heard. Rosie dropped her cue cards onto the desk and pressed a hand to her lips. The tears spilled before she could stop them. A faint, embarrassed laugh escaped her as she shook her head. "You came here to talk about politics," she rasped. "But instead you've..." She trailed off, words lost. Ibrahim didn't interrupt. He waited, patient. And then she found them. "You reminded me what humanity feels like." The livestream chat lit up instantly. "I'm crying too, Rosie. This man is incredible. Truth, pure truth." And still the world kept watching. As the final quarter of the segment began, Rosie, visibly shaken, glanced toward her producer. He gave a subtle nod. "This is still your show." She straightened up, tried to summon the version of herself she knew best, the sharp, unflinching interviewer. "But Mr. Traoré," she said, her tone firming, "don't you think someone more sophisticated would better serve your people? Someone from a global power, perhaps. Someone who understands international politics." The words were sharp. But this time, the audience didn't applaud. The air had changed. The energy in the studio was heavier now, uneasy. Ibrahim didn't flinch. He simply exhaled, calm. "Rosie," he began, "you can't heal a wound from a distance. You have to feel the pain to know where the balm belongs. And he paused, his voice quiet but sure. I have felt every cut my people have endured." His eyes held hers. "Maybe that doesn't make me sophisticated, but it makes me theirs." Rosie froze. What she had intended as a strike had only illuminated his strength. At home, the livestream chat surged again. "He's right? This is leadership. I'm crying and I don't even know why." And for the first time, Rosie looked afraid. Not of him, but of the truth his words awakened in her. A memory stirred, one she hadn't visited in years. She was 7, sitting on a cold kitchen floor, watching her mother sob into her hands because the rent was past due. Rosie had vowed then never again, never to feel that powerless. And yet here was Ibrahim, calm, grounded, unashamed, speaking of pain as though it were a sacred bond, not ashamed to hide. She blinked quickly, trying to stop the tears. I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice breaking. Ibrahim leaned in, his voice gentler than ever. "You don't have to say anything, Rosie. Sometimes silence is the most honest response we have." The words landed like a quiet explosion. The room held its breath. The audience looked from her to him, unsure what to feel, but feeling everything at once. Even the crew behind the cameras seemed spellbound. Rosie's lips pressed together. Her hands trembled on the desk. In the control room, a producer whispered, "This is going viral." It was the final minute. Rosie could barely meet his eyes now. Everything she'd built, her edge, her bravado, her armor, was quietly falling apart. When she finally spoke, her voice was just a breath. "You remind me of something I thought I'd forgotten." Ibrahim's smile was kind, full of grace. "Then maybe my job here is done." The studio fell silent again, not with awkwardness, but reverence. Viewers thousands of miles away wiped their eyes. The chat was ablaze. "Why am I sobbing? This is bigger than politics." Rosie needed to hear this. "So did I." Rosie inhaled shakily, wiping away a tear with the back of her hand. Then she looked Ibrahim directly in the eyes. I owe you an apology," she said. But Ibrahim shook his head. "No, Rosie. You don't owe me anything." He paused, his voice tender. "But you do owe it to yourself. To remember who you were before the world made you forget." A single tear slipped down Rosie's cheek. The camera zoomed in slowly, respectfully, capturing every raw flicker of emotion. And with that, the segment ended. But the story was only just beginning. As the feed cut to commercial, no one in the studio moved. The silence was thick, deafening. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. Rosie sat motionless, her hand covering her mouth, trying to make sense of what she had just experienced. Across from her, Ibrahim remained calm, almost serene. His gaze wasn't judging. It was steady, quiet, full of empathy, that, more than his words, unraveled her. Behind the cameras, crew members busied themselves with phantom tasks. Adjusting mics that didn't need adjusting. Checking cables that were already secure. Anything to avoid the intimacy unfolding at center stage. Then, a whisper from the producer cut through the hush. "Rosie, we're still live. The stream's running. They're watching." She gave a stiff nod and turned back toward Ibrahim. "You know," she began, her voice cracking, "I thought this would be easy. I thought I could break you down, make you look small." Her throat tightened. "But you." She couldn't finish. Ibrahim leaned in slightly, voice low and resolute. "You don't make someone small by standing on their wounds." "Rosie," he said, "you only reveal your own." The sentence echoed like a bell struck deep inside her. And across the globe, in homes and offices, clips of that exact moment were already being shared, looped, captioned, reposted. One comment captured the world's reaction perfectly. That line, "It'll stay with me forever." When the show finally wrapped, Rosie rushed off stage. She didn't want the cameras catching her wiping away more tears. But Ibrahim followed, quiet and unhurried, free of judgment. In the hallway she stopped, pressing her back to the wall. "Why are you like this?" she asked, exasperated. "Why didn't you just fight back like everyone else?" He paused before answering. "Because anger feeds anger," he said softly. "And I've seen too much pain in my country to add more to the world." She looked up at him then. Really looked. You actually care, don't you?" Ibrahim nodded, his voice simple and unadorned. "I have no choice. They are my people. Even when they doubt me, even when they hate me, they are still mine. And maybe," he hesitated, just for a beat, "maybe you are too, Rosie." A lump formed in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. Not on camera, not off. And for the first time in decades, she felt small in a way that didn't shame her. Not belittled, humbled. By the next morning, the clip had exploded online. Truth Traoré was trending in 27 countries. Hundreds of thousands were tweeting, posting, crying. A journalist called it the most human moment ever aired on live television. Another wrote, Rosie came armed with fire, but Ibrahim answered with water, and put out a fire in all of us. Later that afternoon, Rosie posted from her own account. I learned something last night. Thank you, Mr. Traoré. You reminded me what real strength looks like. In Burkina Faso, crowds gathered in public squares, watching the clips on makeshift screens. They cheered his words. But more than that, they felt seen. In a quiet hotel room, Ibrahim sat reading the messages flooding in. He closed his eyes and whispered a prayer. Let them not forget. And across the world on her own couch, Rosie sat in silence, staring at her reflection in the black screen. For the first time in years she cried, not from anger, but from something closer to hope. The morning after, she sat alone in her dressing room, scrolling through the thousands of messages pouring in. Some were cruel, but most were something else. One stood out. Your tears last night made me believe people can still change. Thank you. A mother just then, her assistant knocked softly. Rosie, he's on the line. She blinked. He who, Ibrahim Traoré, he asked to speak with you. Her hands trembled as she picked up the phone. Hello, his voice came through, calm and warm. Rosie, you don't have to say anything. I just wanted you to know, I see your heart, and I forgive what you said last night. We all carry pain we don't understand. She closed her eyes, and for once she didn't try to be strong. I hope one day you see yourself the way I see you. The line went silent. Rosie's eyes filled with tears. In all her years, no one had ever spoken to her like that, not with pity, not with scorn, but with grace. There was no accusation, no judgment, just a quiet, unwavering kindness. And for the first time in decades, her voice barely a whisper, she replied, "Thank you." In the days that followed, their moment, just minutes on screen, spread like wildfire. Clips circulated across every platform. News anchors replayed the exchange with awe. Headlines read, "Calm defeats chaos. How one man won the world's heart." Rosie O'Donnell silenced by grace. Ibrahim Traoré shows us all a different kind of power. Social media lit up. Fake Grace B. Traoré trended worldwide. People shared how his words had inspired them to reconnect with estranged loved ones, to apologize, to forgive, even themselves. In Burkina Faso, schoolchildren began repeating his sentence like a proverb. In New York, strangers on the subway turned their screens toward each other, watching that same clip with tears in their eyes. Rosie issued a public statement. I thought I was confronting a politician. Instead, I met a human being, wiser, kinder, and more grounded than I knew how to be. The world needs more of him. That night, in the quiet of his hotel room, Ibrahim read message after message from people he would never meet. He didn't feel proud. He didn't feel triumphant. He simply smiled. Because for one brief, shining moment, the world had remembered what kindness sounded like. On the final day of his visit to the U.S., Ibrahim was invited to speak before a small audience at the United Nations. Rosie sat in the front row, silent and attentive. When he finished, there was a stillness. No one moved, no one clapped, not at first. Then, slowly, one by one, the room stood, not in applause for a policy or a speech, but for something deeper, his humanity. Rosie stood too, brushing a tear from her cheek. Later, she approached him. You taught me something no debate or headline ever could, she said. That real strength is quiet. He nodded gently. And real change, he replied, starts in the heart. That clip went viral too. The image of Rosie embracing Ibrahim, both of them smiling through tears, became a symbol, not of victory, but of healing. And for millions watching, it stopped being about winning or losing. It became about remembering what it means to be human. Dear viewers, if this story touched you, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and most importantly, sharing your thoughts in the comments. Your words matter. Your voice matters. Let's keep telling stories that remind us of our shared humanity. Don't just watch, be part of the conversation. Thank you.